The sound of the machines was the only thing keeping him anchored. Steady, mechanical, unforgiving. Every beep in the hospital room reminded him that his daughter was still alive, but barely. Staff Sergeant Mason Carter stood beside the bed, his hands resting on the metal railing as if it were the only solid thing left in his world. The fluorescent lights above cast harsh shadows across the room, reflecting off the white bandages wrapped around the small girl's head. She looked so fragile, so still. He had seen worse in combat zones. He had watched men die in his arms. But nothing had ever broken him like this. Before I tell you what happened next, subscribe the channel and let me know in the comments where are you watching from. It helps more than you know. The words felt strange even inside his own head, but habit had become discipline. Discipline kept him standing. The door opened quietly. His wife stepped in, her eyes red from crying. "The doctors said the swelling is going down," she whispered. "They think she'll recover." Mason nodded, but his gaze never left the bed. "How bad?" She swallowed. "2 fractures. They said the impact could have killed her. The room seemed to shrink. Tell me exactly what happened." His wife hesitated. "My father, he lost his temper." Mason's jaw tightened. "Why?" He said she was disrespectful, that she needed discipline. The words echoed. Discipline. Mason finally looked at her. He slammed her head into concrete. Tears streamed down her face. "I tried to stop him. My brothers held me back. The silence that followed was heavier than any explosion." Mason felt something inside him shift. Not rage, not grief. Focus. "Where are they now?" "At the house." "Did the police come?" "Yes, and?" She looked away. "Nothing." "Why?" "My father called someone. A senator." The officers left. Mason exhaled slowly. Of course they did. Her father had built an empire after leaving the military. Defense contracts, political influence, security firms. He was respected, feared, untouchable, or at least he believed he was. Mason leaned closer to the bed. His daughter's fingers twitched. He placed his hand gently over hers. "I'm here," he said quietly. Her eyes opened slightly. "Daddy?" "Yes." "Did I do something wrong?" The question shattered what little control he had. "No," he said. "You did nothing wrong. Grandpa said you were weak." Mason's chest tightened. "What else did he say?" "That you couldn't protect us." The machines continued their steady rhythm. Mason kissed her forehead carefully, avoiding the bandages. "I will always protect you." Her eyes closed again. That night, Mason stepped into the hospital parking lot and called a number he had not used in years. The line connected after one ring. "Carter, I need the team." There was a pause. "That bad?" "Yes." "Who?" "My father-in-law." Another silence. "Understood." Over the next few hours, the pieces began to move. Former Delta operators, intelligence contacts, legal allies. They gathered quietly. No noise, no trace. Marcus Cole arrived first, stepping out of a black truck. "I thought you were done with this life," he said. "So did I." Marcus studied his face. "What's the objective?" Mason looked toward the hospital. "They broke my daughter's skull." Marcus nodded slowly. "Then we break everything they built." The rest of the team arrived before dawn. Logan, Victor, Hayes. Men who had fought beside Mason in places that never appeared on maps. They stood in a circle, listening. Mason laid out the situation. Influence, corruption, political protection. Hayes spoke first. "We could make this disappear." Mason shook his head. "No. You want them alive? I want them exposed." Victor crossed his arms. "Harder, yes." Logan smiled slightly. "More satisfying." Mason's voice was calm. "We do this right. No marks, no mistakes, no loose ends." Marcus nodded. "And when it's done?" Mason looked at each of them. "They never touch anyone again." The sun began to rise. In the hospital, his daughter slept peacefully, unaware that her grandfather had just declared war, and Mason Carter had never lost one. The first step was patience. Mason Carter had learned that long before Delta, before the selection, before the missions that left shadows on his mind and scars on his body. You did not move because you were angry. You moved when the target was weakest. 3 days after the attack, he stood inside a rented warehouse on the outskirts of Denver watching footage projected across a large screen. The building smelled of oil, dust, and quiet preparation. Marcus leaned against the table. Your father-in-law doesn't think this is serious. Good, Mason said. On the screen, the man laughed with business partners at a private golf course. Expensive suits, confident posture, surrounded by security. He thinks his connections will protect him, Logan added. They always have, Hayes said. Mason studied every detail, the way the guards moved, the routes, the blind spots, the habits. Arrogance, Mason said. That's the weakness. Victor tapped a file. We dug deeper. He's worse than we thought. How? Illegal defense contracts, bribes, shell companies, and something else. What? Private detention sites. Off the books. The room grew quiet. Mason's voice dropped. Human trafficking? Not confirmed, Victor replied, but the evidence suggests it. Mason felt the cold clarity settle deeper. This isn't revenge anymore, Marcus nodded. It never was. That evening, Mason returned to the hospital. His daughter was awake, sitting upright with help from the nurse. Her smile was small but real. You're back, she said. I always come back. She held his hand tightly. Are they in trouble? They will be. Are you going to hurt them? Mason hesitated. I'm going to stop them. She seemed satisfied with that. His wife stood in the corner watching. When the nurse left, she stepped closer. You're planning something dangerous, yes. You could lose everything. I already almost did. Her voice shook. They're still my family. Mason met her eyes. And she is our daughter. Silence. Finally, she nodded. Just don't become someone you can't come back from. He didn't answer, because he wasn't sure. Later that night, the operation began. They followed the brothers first, the wife's older siblings, loyal, violent, overconfident. One by one, the team mapped their routines, bars, gyms, late-night drives. Logan smirked as he studied the schedule. These guys think they're untouchable. They're about to learn, Hayes said. The first capture was clean. A quiet parking garage, no witnesses, no noise. The man never saw Marcus behind him. When he woke, he was in a secure room, hands restrained, fear already visible. You have no idea who you're dealing with, he said. Marcus smiled slightly. We do. Over the next hours, the truth began to surface. Assaults, cover-ups, bribes, connections to private security groups. Everything recorded, everything documented. Mason watched from behind the glass. He felt nothing, not anger, not satisfaction, only precision. The second brother came next. This time the man fought. It didn't matter. Within minutes he was also secured. By morning both were contained. Marcus approached Mason. They're talking. Good. And your father-in-law? Mason looked at the board. He's next. His security is tight. So was every target we ever hit. Victor leaned forward. We found something else. A meeting tomorrow. Private. No guards. Where? A hunting lodge in the mountains. Mason nodded. Perfect. The team prepared through the night. Weapons, equipment, transport. But the most important part was the legal side. Marcus coordinated with their intelligence contact. When this goes public, it has to be airtight, he said. It will be, the contact replied. Mason stepped outside as the sun rose. The air was cold, sharp, grounding. His phone buzzed. A message from the hospital. His daughter had asked for him. He drove there immediately. She looked stronger. Did you find them? She asked. Yes. Are you scared? Mason thought for a moment. No. Why? Because I'm not alone. She smiled. Good. As he left the hospital, Marcus stood waiting beside the truck. Ready? Mason nodded. Yes. The mountain road stretched ahead, winding through silence and pine trees. Somewhere at the top, a powerful man believed he still controlled the game, but Mason Carter had already changed the rules, and by the time the sun set again, nothing in that man's world would remain the same. The mountain air was colder than Mason expected. It cut through layers of clothing, sharp and clean, carrying the scent of pine and distant snow. The hunting lodge sat at the edge of a ridge, isolated and silent except for the occasional echo of wind through the trees. From the tree line, Mason watched through binoculars. 2 vehicles in the driveway. No visible guards, no perimeter patrol. "Too easy," Logan whispered beside him. "Arrogance," Marcus said quietly. "He thinks he's untouchable." Mason lowered the binoculars. "That ends today." They moved as a unit, silent and controlled. Years of training had shaped every step, every breath. By the time they reached the lodge, the sun had begun to dip behind the mountains, casting long shadows across the clearing. Inside, voices carried through the walls. Mason raised his hand. The team paused. He pushed the door open. The conversation stopped instantly. His father-in-law stood near the fireplace, drink in hand, surprise flashing across his face before it turned into anger. "You have a lot of nerve showing up here," the man said. Mason stepped forward. "You nearly killed my daughter. She needed discipline." The man replied coldly. "You're raising her weak." The words echoed in the room. Mason's expression did not change. "You're going to come with me." The man laughed. "You think you can touch me? Do you know who I am?" "Yes." "And you still came?" "Yes." The man's hand moved toward the phone on the table. Marcus blocked him. The arrogance vanished. "You're making a mistake," the man said. "No," Mason replied. "You did. The operation was fast, precise." The man was restrained within seconds. The others in the room, business partners, political allies, were also secured. Logan checked the exits. Clean. Hayes began recording. Mason crouched in front of the man who had once been family. "You will explain everything." "I owe you nothing." Mason leaned closer. "You owe her everything." The man hesitated. Marcus placed a folder on the table. Evidence. Contracts, offshore accounts, bribes. The man's confidence began to crack. "You don't understand," he said. "This is bigger than you." "Then explain." The truth came slowly. Illegal weapons deals, secret detention sites, political manipulation, years of corruption. Mason listened without emotion. When it was over, he stood. "This goes to the authorities. You think they will act?" The man asked. "They will." The man smirked. "You still don't understand. I built that system." Mason nodded. "Yes. And now we dismantle it." They transported the prisoners to a secure facility. By dawn, the evidence had been delivered through channels that could not be silenced. The news broke within hours. Investigations opened. Allies vanished. The empire began to collapse. But Mason knew it wasn't finished. Back at the hospital, his daughter sat upright, coloring. She looked up when he entered. "You're smiling," she said. "For the first time in days. Did you win?" "Not yet." "Why not?" "Because some people fight harder when they lose." She nodded thoughtfully. "Like you." Mason sat beside her. "Yes." She studied his face. "Are you tired?" He thought about the nights without sleep, the weight of everything. "No." "Why?" "Because you're still here." She smiled. His wife stood in the doorway, watching. When their eyes met, she saw something had changed. "It's happening," she said. "Yes." "Are we safe?" "For now." That night, Marcus brought new information. "He's still connected," Marcus said. "There's someone else pulling strings." "Who?" "A former intelligence director. He's protecting the network." Mason's expression hardened. "Then we go higher." Marcus leaned back. "This just became bigger than revenge." Mason nodded. "It always was. The war had started with one violent act, but now it had exposed a system built on power and fear, and Mason Carter had no intention of stopping until every piece of it was gone, because the man who had attacked his daughter had opened a door. And behind it was a darkness far deeper than anyone expected. The man they were hunting did not live like ordinary people. Former director Stephen Lockwood had spent a lifetime in shadows. Even after leaving government service, he never truly retired. His influence stretched across intelligence agencies, private defense companies, and political networks that operated far beyond public scrutiny. Mason Carter stood in the dimly lit operations room of their temporary safe house, staring at the digital map projected across the wall. Lines connected cities, offshore accounts, shell companies, and covert transport routes. Marcus tapped one of the highlighted points. This is where he's been operating for the last year. Northern Virginia. Private estate. Heavy security. Logan folded his arms. We're not dealing with businessmen anymore. No, Mason said. We're dealing with someone trained to anticipate us. Hayes looked up from his laptop. He already knows you're coming. Good. Marcus glanced at Mason. You're calm. I've been here before. Against enemies overseas. This time it's personal. That night, Mason drove to the hospital alone. His daughter was asleep, her breathing steady. The bandages had been reduced and the swelling was finally going down. He sat beside her, watching the rise and fall of her chest. For a moment he allowed himself to feel everything. The fear, the helplessness, the anger. Then he let it go. He leaned closer and whispered, I'm almost finished. When he stepped outside, his wife was waiting. You're leaving again, she said. Yes. This one feels different, it is. Will you come back? Mason met her eyes. I always do. She hesitated. Just promise me one thing. What? Don't lose yourself. He nodded, but the truth was more complicated, because part of him had already crossed a line. The next morning, the team assembled near the estate. The property was fortified. Cameras, motion sensors, armed guards. It looked more like a private military base than a residence. Victor studied the layout. Multiple entry points, underground bunker, escape routes. Logan smirked. He's scared. He should be, Marcus said. Mason watched the patrol patterns. We don't go in loud, no? Hayes asked. No. We isolate him. Over the next 12 hours, they disrupted every layer of Lockwood's security. Communications jammed, power grid interference, false alerts, financial accounts frozen through covert channels. By nightfall, Lockwood was alone. Inside the estate, he waited. When Mason entered, the older man did not look surprised. I wondered how long it would take, Lockwood said. You protected them. I protected stability. You protected criminals. Lockwood sighed. You think you're the hero here? I think I'm the consequence. The man studied him. Your father-in-law was a small part of something much larger. Removing him will change nothing. It already has. You've destabilized alliances, contracts, intelligence operations. Good. Lockwood leaned forward. You don't understand the vacuum you're creating. I understand perfectly. The man smiled faintly. Then you know I'm not your real enemy. Mason's eyes narrowed. Explain. There are governments involved, corporations, global players. I was keeping balance. By allowing violence against children? Lockwood's expression hardened. Sacrifices are necessary. Mason stepped closer. No. The confrontation was brief. Lockwood was restrained, his network exposed, his leverage gone. Marcus secured the data drives while Hayes transmitted evidence to multiple agencies. Within hours, investigations opened across several countries. The system began collapsing. As they escorted Lockwood out, he spoke one last time. You've started something you can't control. Mason looked at him. That's the point. Because corruption thrived in silence. And Mason Carter had just turned the lights on. But the final battle was not the arrests. It was what came after. Reputation, trials, justice, and whether the world would truly change. For the first time in years, Mason felt something unfamiliar. Hope, but hope was fragile. And he knew that the last step would determine everything. The trials began within weeks. For the first time in decades, powerful men sat in courtrooms not as witnesses or influencers, but as defendants. The media covered every moment. Former allies denied involvement. Corporations rushed to distance themselves. Politicians claimed ignorance. But the evidence was undeniable. Mason Carter watched from the back of the federal courtroom in Washington. He wore a simple suit instead of his uniform. He did not want attention. He did not want recognition. He only wanted the truth to stand. Across the room, his father-in-law looked smaller than Mason had ever seen him. The arrogance was gone. The certainty had faded. Shackles rested on his wrists. The charges were extensive: assault, conspiracy, bribery, human trafficking, illegal arms contracts, obstruction of justice. Every crime documented, every lie dismantled. His wife sat beside Mason, hands trembling. Watching her father fall was not easy, but she did not look away. "This had to happen," she whispered. Mason nodded. The prosecution presented testimony from victims, contractors, financial analysts, and intelligence officials. The network that had once seemed untouchable was exposed piece by piece. Days passed. Then the verdict came: guilty. On every count. The sentence ensured he would never see freedom again. The courtroom erupted with sound. Reporters shouted. Cameras flashed. But Mason heard none of it. He only felt the tension inside him finally release. Marcus leaned toward him. "It's over." "Yes, you did it." "No," Mason said quietly. "We did." Outside, the world had changed. Public outrage forced reforms. Investigations expanded. New protections were introduced. For once, power had not been enough. But the most important change was not political. It was personal. Months later, Mason stood beside his daughter in a rehabilitation center. She held onto parallel bars, concentrating with fierce determination. The fractures had healed, but the recovery was slow. "You can do this," Mason said. She took a step, then another. Her smile was bright, stronger than before. "I told you I'm tough," she said. "You are." His wife stood nearby, watching with tears in her eyes. "She gets that from you," she said. Mason shook his head. "She gets it from both of us." The future felt uncertain but hopeful. That evening, the family returned home. For the first time since the attack, laughter filled the house again. Later, Mason sat outside watching the sunset. Marcus joined him. "What now?" Marcus asked. "I go back to work. Back to the quiet wars." "Yes." Marcus nodded. "You never really left." Mason looked at the horizon. "No, but now you know why you fight." Mason thought about his daughter's question. Did he win? Victory was not revenge. Victory was protection. It was making sure the people you loved could live without fear. Inside the house, his daughter called for him. He stood and walked toward the sound. Because this war had always been about one thing: family, and the promise that no one would ever hurt them again. And if you've been listening this far, subscribe to the channel and let me know in the comments what time it is where you're watching from. It helps more than you know.